Welcome to the round ball round warm up. That's the one. We've got Cameron Wyper here to discuss many things in the week of football in Australia. We had two midweek games. We had Melbourne Victory versus Wellington last night, and we had Melbourne City versus Sydney FC on Tuesday. But there are bigger headlines in these two games. Tony Popovic has been sacked from Xanthi FC. I actually broke the news in Australia, not to brag, early on Monday morning. I think Tuesday morning, sorry. And yeah, so joining us is the Greek Herald's Peter Oglos, who was also at Sydney Olympics warm-up function earlier this week. And he's going to speak on why Popovic got sacked and perhaps some news on Zlatko Kalac as well. Welcome, Peter.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Anytime, mate. So yeah, take the reins. Obviously, a shock to many that Popovic got the sack this early. Can you sort of bring a conventional sentimentality into why Popovic got sacked from Xanthi?
Well, I think it came as actually quite a surprise for the players, especially because I don't know if you even saw the SBS interview. They didn't expect it. I don't think even the Australian public didn't really expect it. Look, they'd lost a couple games. Obviously, not the greatest start. I think it was a bit too early. I mean, he's attacking. Look, the way he's attacking also goes is he does like to push hard. He does push fast along the wings. The Greeks they like to hold back. It doesn't help his kind of attacking play. But at the same time, you can adapt. You can work with what you have. I don't think he was given enough time, personally. I think he should have been given more time. But yeah, it was a big shock to me as well, if I'm being honest. Because at the Sydney Olympic launch, which was before you broke it, so it was about 4 hours ago. Bill Pappas was president, Damon Hanlon, both board members of Xanthi FC. They spoke about how the club was doing. They said, what was Bill Pappas's exact words were, not exactly where they wanted to be, which, considering the announcement was made 4 hours later, it's a bit of an odd comment. But look, I think it will be interesting to see where they go from there.
Yeah, a lot was discussed. A lot of conflicting reports came out saying that the fans weren't obviously happy with Popovic's largely defensive play style. Cameron, you know a lot about that. Obviously, he was at the Glory for 2 years. And also that the Greek players were not happy with him at all, and that he lost the dressing room, essentially. And now a lot of discussion that has been conjured up is about where will these Australian players go. Kalac is gone. Popovic is gone. I want to still know if Arthur Dillies is still there. There's been no news on that.
I was going to say that actually. He's there, to my opinion. And if I were Pappas and Damon Hanlon and I guess all the board members, I wouldn't be letting him go for a few reasons as well. I think he's very integral to the way they want to build the club in terms of just as an assistant coach, but just the way he brings in youth, the way he uses youth. He was with Western Sydney Wanderers for 3 years. He was extremely successful there. But I think he's so crucial to the way that team works. And he is also Greek. He does have that benefit, of course. He can speak the language, which Popovic probably wasn't as handy could. I'm not too sure what his Greek was like. But personally, I think his job is safe. I don't know the back end at the moment. I did briefly speak with some board members. They didn't mention anything. But I think his job is safe. Personally, I think they need him. But that being said, we didn't expect Popovic. So
yeah, I guess Cameron. What were your immediate thoughts? I was up very early in the morning on was it Tuesday or was it Monday? I can't remember. But
Monday night, Tuesday morning.
Yeah, so Tuesday morning. Obviously, we engage in our private conversations. I guess more of like, oh my God, this is actually happening so early. What are your thoughts? Hey, you've obviously had some time to reflect on the decision. Just bring up some thoughts, mate.
Yeah. So when you messaged me in a hurry, on it was Monday. I was pretty shocked. I'd kept an eye on Xanthi and how they've been doing, and I could see that the form wasn't the best. But I remember watching I think it was Popovic's first press conference, and he said along the lines of, "We don't expect to go up first season. We're trying to build something here rather than try and get back straight away. We're trying to build something in the club." So it was pretty shocking that he's been given, I think, 7 or 8 games, and they're 5th in the table with a game in hand, and they've lost just twice. And it came after a win, which, to my understanding, they were down to 10 men. They might have been pretty fortuitous to get that win, but at the end of the day, 3 points is 3 points, and his team showed that they can scrap for it. They got an 84th minute winner. So it's, bewildering that they've sacked him. But I've had a look through social media, and the Greek fans seem to be quite happy that he's gone. So, I'm not a massive Greek football expert, but from my standpoint, it's shocking, quite frankly.
Yeah, I guess really it's a reflection on, I'd say, Greek football as a whole, and how unforgiving it is. People say it's very, very murky waters in those European leagues. I think it's a really unfortunate thing that two Australians who have sort of branched out into European countries in the coaching realm, being Kevin Muscat and Tony Popovic, I've got the sack pretty early in their managerial careers. I think that Popovic, like Kalac, should maybe venture forth into Europe. I do believe he still has a place to coach in Europe somewhere. I mean, what he did with that Perth Glory squad last year in the hub is remarkable. What he's done with the Perth Glory squad as a whole is also remarkable. To turn that side from largely a disappointment into perennial title contenders in just a matter of seasons, was amazing. But I guess, Peter, you obviously were at the Sydney Olympic function. What did you sort of ascertain from Papas and Mandlin as to the direction that both clubs actually going into?
I think they still very much drove home the point of they wanted to make it, I guess, that kind of pathway into Europe. They always add emphasis on the younger players. They always like to, and I think even on the Alpha deals, how it was good for young players, they want to bring in not even so much, your Sydney Olympic first team, but the players in those youth squads that have potential. They want to send them off to Greece. They want to get them into Europe as soon as possible. And I think that's a good thing in personal. I think there should be more, young players from the ages of 15, 16 playing overseas. It is obviously, difficult, lots of complications there. But I think it's important to broaden your aspect. So they do have a high emphasis on that. I had a high emphasis on that during the Sydney Olympic launch. But besides that, they pretty much just want to keep that as a hub for Australian players, which, it's difficult, I guess, if you're an Australian player, you're going to Greece, you want to be able to. It's difficult for anyone playing under a coach where you don't speak the same language. Obviously Popovic, all those Australian players could speak English to Popovic. But yeah, I don't know. With Dilly's there, it's still a good spot for Australians. I think the Greek League is also a good spot just for players to get that entry into Europe, because it is tough, it is aggressive, it is very strong, and it gives these Australian players a big wake up. If they can tough it out in the Greek Super League 2 or the Greek Super League 1, if they get promoted, they can tough it out in a good few leagues in Europe. So I think it's important that these young players, they shouldn't be deterred from this Popovic sacking in, I'm not too big on going to Greece now, or any European club. I think they should still see it as a good, viable European destination, realistically.
Yeah, I still hold the same sort of reservations about what you're saying. I do think that it's obviously a disaster. The project was a disaster with Popovic. There's no doubt about that. I still think they should have persisted with him despite the result on the table. I guess when there's fan upheaval to the extent of what there was at Xanthi, you do really have to make changes. We've seen that with the Victory as well, and they haven't made any changes. So clubs operate differently in Europe. It's a more unforgiving business there, and you can definitely see why the board pulled the trigger. And my understanding, there was also pressure from the Greek board members to remove Popovic from his position as well. So politics upon politics in the Greek second division. Isn't that right, Cameron?
Yeah. If I may, who do you think is going to take the place of Popovic? Do you think it will be another Australian coach, or do you think it will be someone plucked from Europe?
By the way it sounds, I would love for Arthidoulis to take over, but by the way it sounds like they want a Greek, both the players in the dressing room and the fans, they want a Greek coach. So I assume they might look either into the region, in the Xanthi region, or they might look for another area. I think it depends. Yeah, I feel like it'd be a big board discussion of what does the club need, what do the players need. But I mean, my pick would be Arthidoulis. I think he's a fantastic coach. I'm not just trying to pump up Arthidoulis, but I just that's what it sounds like I'm doing, but I'm not. I promise you. I just think he's a good coach, and he's good with building relationships in a team, which I think is what Xanthi needs. They need to build that relationship. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I do think it's going to be a very interesting few weeks for Xanthi and Australian football as a whole as we wait for Tony Popovic's, Zdravko Kalac's, and ultimately Xanthi's next move. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us once again on short notice. But you've been an absolutely wonderful acquisition once again.
Oh, good. I would like to add as well, I do also feel very bad because we didn't mention it as well for Popovic's kids. For obviously his departure, it makes the situation sticky. Obviously for them getting any game time, getting, just being at the club as a whole. So I hope everything works out for them. Yeah,
I mean, people would love to see them succeed. Others don't, but each to their own in their own way. They're both very talented. I'm more of a Christian fan, in my opinion, but. Hey, look, it is what it is. Thank you very much, Peter. We'll definitely reconvene sometime in the future when Xanthi hopefully appoint a new head coach that won't be sacked within 6 weeks. But hopefully all goes well. Thank you very much for your contributions. We'll catch you soon. Thank you. Easy. Yeah, so interesting revelations in the world of Greece. Just some news that came through on SBS. Mohamed Toure and Alassane Toure have actually linked with an agent. And I'm just going to share a bit of this article that Dave Lewis did. So basically what it is stated in this article is that I'm going to put it down to here. To the date, most of the interest has been centered on Mohamed, who turns 17 next month, with older sibling Al-Hassan building his way back to match sharpness with an injury. And if you go above that, AFP management, who roster also includes Chelsea and former current Crystal Palace and former Chelsea player Michy Batshuayi, and also Willy Bolly and the likes of. If you go down further, apparently he's attracted interest from Leeds United, RB Salzburg, and Bayern Munich. Interesting stuff. So this is the extent to which Mohamed Toure was being courted by European clubs. Obviously, Bayern Munich, the glaring club out of the three there. But Cameron, what are your thoughts on this? This is pretty big, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. Toure is, both the Toure brothers are superb. We've seen that. Bayern Munich, Leeds and Salzburg are three clubs that have a lot of emphasis on developing young players. They've done it throughout the times where they've been so successful. So those are three clubs that, pretty solid bet that you're going to go there and you're going to get an opportunity eventually if you're good enough. So that's pretty big news in terms of those two, particularly Toure. He can. It's my belief that he could be like the next big thing. We don't want to heap loads of pressure onto him because we've seen what's happened with Arzani, for example. So yeah, this is quite a good move, and hopefully it's not too soon for him, but. The way things are going, by the time anything can occur, I don't think European clubs can sign anyone. Yeah, until the summer, he'll have had a full season in the A-League to develop.
I still hold the belief that he still needs another year in the A-League before he actually goes on into Europe. To be honest, I think you have to be of 18. You look at the likes of Kasper Tafta, who went to Benfica at a very young age, and he's obviously retired now. There are many players who have made that trip to Europe and have just failed. So, yeah, Alan Riley saying Torre could be the next big thing. Which one though? They're both of them are pretty good. Al-Hassan obviously come back from injury, but you never know which one could make the next big step into Europe. We're talking about Al-Hassan a year ago, obviously scoring the FFA Cup final and starring in the FFA Cup as a whole. And I think it's going to be a really interesting couple of months for Adelaide United and Mohamed Torre as a whole. Going on to our A-League review, we've obviously got Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City, who are back to winning ways. My rant did do wonders for Melbourne Victory. We'll focus on that game first. They faced... Sorry? Did you mention something, or was it just the video that I'm about to play? My apologies. So yeah, Melbourne Victory faced the Wellington Phoenix last night. I was there in the crowd. And it was you definitely felt, I did put out a tweet saying it had a last dance feel to it, not in the positive way. But the Victory, for who they started, who played, performed pretty well under the circumstances that they've been faced. Really, I think they dominated the first sort of phase of the game, dropped off a little bit, and as Wellington started to heap some pressure onto Victory. But it was really the Rudy Gestede show, the one-trick pony, who got 2 headers within about 10 minutes, if you look at the timing. But yeah, he also got a very early chance here, so he could have added 3 or 4. But Cameron, Victory are back to winning ways. This is a sign for the future, potentially.
Sorry, you've cut out there. I've missed that question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we were just talking about the Victory. Do you think this is a possible sort of foreshadowing of what could happen in the future? They could just become a dominative side in the A-League. This is maybe the moment where they can finally get some wins on the board.
I think you said it yourself about Gestede. This is not entirely a return to his best, because those were 2 exact same situations where he's been able to bully his marker and get a header across goal. And Melbourne Victory cannot rely on just that. Yes, it's quite promising that they shut Wellington out. Wellington were a dangerous side on Wednesday night, and I think Melbourne Victory can take a lot of credit for keeping a clean sheet, which they've not had so much of an issue doing. It's more the fact that they cannot score goals. It's good that they got 2. It's good that Gestede got 2 for his confidence. But we're going to
look at the elation on his face there. Look at how he ran to Brebner. It's clearly a very tight knit group there. And,
yeah, I think there's a lot of relief in there as well, because he'll know better than anyone if he'd gone a couple of more weeks without scoring, getting anything close to being half the player he was in the Championship or the Premier League. There were going to be serious questions asked. And I think if you're really just dead, if you can't do it in the A-League, then where else have you got to go? Considering he was playing Premier League not so long ago. So yeah, it's a promising sign, but there is still a lot of work to go. This is by no means the end of it. Let's not forget that Wellington are probably the poorest side in the league at the moment. Not necessarily because of the talent they have. I think it's just the fact that every team has been able to get some good results this season. And obviously with the relocation, they're not in the best position to succeed in the moment. And I think the table reflects that at the moment. The Melbourne Victory will have bigger tests in the next couple of weeks than Wellington.
Definitely. The game against West United is a key one. United are coming off a win against, near top of the table, MacArthur. Pretty stunning win as a whole. They didn't really have much of the ball, West United. They really just reacted on the counter, driving the ball through transition, obviously to Diamante and obviously Goran Chenna, who played an absolute blinder. But I think both teams coming off huge wins in their books. This is going to make a pretty spicy derby. I'm not even going to call it derby, just a spicy fixture as a whole. But I was also at this game as well in the media box for City versus Xanthi FC. Scott McJamison, good to see him with his daughter. But you've got to say, what City did, this is a stunning revelation that they are looking dominant on the ball here. Sydney haven't been dismantled like this in almost 4 years.
Yeah, 3-2 was very, very fortunate on the part of Sydney. City, if they'd held it together, could have easily scored more, and they should have kept Sydney to less than 2 goals. The 2 goals that they did concede, it was lapses in concentration late on. But it's actually quite remarkable. I think Melbourne City had 2 weeks off or something, 2 or 3.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks off, yeah.
Yeah, and suddenly they look a different side. This is not the same side that went to Central Coast and got played off the park in that second half. They were fantastic today. This was shades of how they were under Monberts at the end of last season. This was a very, very good free-flowing performance. McLaren is back in the goals. And look, you can see here, they should really have scored more. So, it's, good to see that from them. And I think there are big question marks over Sydney now. And I think because of how unpredictable the league is this year, that every team has got question marks over them. And it's about who's responding better to any defeats or any losses. And Sydney, they've gone from a 0-0 at home to Brisbane. They've gone to Melbourne City. Bobo has started, their big striker that has provided so much for them a couple of years ago. And they've really come up short here. And 3-2 was a fortunate result for them in terms of what it really should have been.
Yeah, I mean, look, the trio's substitution of Milos Ninkovic, Patrick Wood, and Geordie Swibble, shout out to Geordie, really put Sydney in a much better position. I think they didn't really play to Bobo's strengths, and that's what Steve Corica mentioned in his post-match press conference. And I think he was very downtrodden. I mean, he definitely acknowledged the fact that they didn't really deserve the 3 points, or if any points at all. Where Sydney faltered here was mainly just their ability to their inability to counter City's counter press. Naboo was outstanding. Played 90 minutes on a 6-week hamstring injury return. And to see how City responded from those pretty poor results in the northern New South Wales region a couple of weeks ago, they've been absolutely outstanding. I think Andrew Redmayne, to be fair, had a pretty harsh blunder at the start of the game where it led to City's first goal, but they looked brilliant in transition. They looked brilliant in all areas of the park. There wasn't one player who looked pretty bad. Adrian Luna, fantastic as well. Naboo, he's really got his touch back. I think under Kisnorba's system, he will really flourish in the weeks to come. And to see Jamie McLaren obviously having that striker's instinct is wonderful to see. But I'm also going to highlight Patrick Wood. Patrick Wood is 18 years old. He's got that instinct to be in the right place at the right time and to grab a golden assist in such a high-intensity match when they're down 3-0 and to really almost bring the game back to level pegging was incredibly impressive.
Yeah, the goal that he had was pretty much put on a plate for him, but he was.
The assist was nice.
That substitution changed how the game was. It didn't do enough to change what the result was, obviously, and it didn't do enough to change the minds of people that Sydney were unlucky in this game. But Patrick Wood was, again, he did what he could. And that is a fantastic assist there. That is something that Ninkovic, the one that scored, would be proud of. This is a cracking ball in. He's put it right on a plate for such an experienced player. He's not going to miss there. And, that bit of quality was something that Sydney were missing for the game. It brought him on and Ninkovic, and it changed it completely. But yeah, it wasn't enough to overturn the result by any. The 2 goals that they did get were fortuitous, and particularly this final goal was a big lapse in concentration. I I think it's Nuno Rice that's just caught ball watching. He's caught between two players, and Sydney, they're good enough to cut people apart. So yeah, Patrick Wood was good. Ninkovic was good. The rest of Sydney were pretty poor that night.
I think the only glaring sort of performance that came out from Sydney was probably Joel King. I thought he was pretty impressive. Ryan Grant with his new haircut doesn't really seem to be performing as well as he did without the sort of shaved hairstyle. But look, I think there's a lot to take from this game for Sydney. They definitely have to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate what they did wrong in the past two games. I think they were very fortuitous to have not gone down 3-0. But then again, it almost was a 3-3, a penalty shout in the last minute of that game. So extremely interesting stuff in general from those, I guess, fixtures. But we'll move on to these three games that we're going to preview. Obviously, the Perth Glory are finally in action after 2 long weeks of isolation. The Perth Glory are back in action. They're facing off against the Brisbane Roar. I'm actually not going to show any highlights because none of them are relevant anymore. We've obviously showed the Brisbane Roar highlights already, and Perth Glory haven't played in almost 3 weeks. So, Cameron, what can we expect from a refreshed, rejuvenated Perth Glory with Sebastian Langkamp in quarantine?
This will be one of the best games that we've seen all season, because Perth have done all right away from home. They've not been outstanding, but they tore Adelaide apart at home, and there's no reason why they can't do that to Brisbane, seeing as how MacArthur were able to capitalise on them before. But Brisbane, they held strong against Sydney. They can probably do a job in Perth as well. But yeah, both teams like to attack. They don't want to sit back and defend by any stretch of the imagination. I think Brisbane are better at sitting back and defending than Perth are, but Perth do not sit back and defend at home. It just does not happen. When they're at home, they go for the throat, as we saw against Adelaide. And I don't think Brisbane will be able to cope with that. I think Tommy Aldred had a couple of fitness issues against Sydney. He played remarkably well, considering that he was all bandaged up and patched up. But I think Andy Keogh is back for the game, despite picking up a knock from being pushed too hard. I think Otter is in contention, and Economy.
Yeah, Otter has been pictured training, so yeah, he is in contention. Yeah,
and Economy is still a little bit of time away, but I think just having an extra senior head in defence will go a long way to improving that defence that has been pretty poor so far. But yeah, it's a weird one because Perth have absolutely no form because they've been they haven't played in 3 weeks. Although they came off a win last time. But Brisbane, they're in a little bit of a rough patch. They're not as good as they started off as. Yeah, I think the key battle will be between Dylan Wenzel-Halls and Jonathan Aspro. This will be what decides the game, because Wenzel-Halls, Brisbane can be playing sort of meh, and Wenzel-Halls will take them up a gear and he will find a goal. He can score, he can take the ball and run with it, he can sit in the penalty area and wait for a chance, he can do everything. So Aspro and whoever else starts at centre back, I think Osama Malik is in contention again as well. That will be the key battle for me. If Aspro can keep Wenzel-Halls quiet, then I think Perth should be comfortable. But Wenzel-Halls has made every defence this season look cagey. So I think it'll be a really good contest.
Yeah, a lot to come from that one. And I think the last one we'll actually focus on. We actually talked a bit on Victory versus West United about both teams having renewed confidence going into this game. I guess not much to say besides that. Both teams look pretty good. I think Victory do have some defensive problems there. First of all these soft tissue injuries are really starting to question the Gotcha's paddock surface. I mean, I should have maybe went there yesterday and just put my hand on the grass. See, it was a little bit too hard, but Yeah, I think West United are definitely in a positive position. I think Mark Rutten has really galvanized that side and has, definitely structured that side in a better position. It was a tactical masterclass on the weekend against MacArthur, a well-oiled machine that was. But I think there's more to come from West United. I do think Victory, their attack, if Marco Rojas is fit, I would expect that Victory are able to grab a couple goals. It seems that Breb has changed the structure a little bit. They didn't really sit back last game; they really started to push forward. And I hope to see a start from Zayden Bello or either or both Dalibor Markovic. Dalibor Markovic really impressed me yesterday, and for two debutants to come into such a high intensity, high pressure game and perform like they did, it's a reflection on the resilience of the football club in general to play those youth players and really uncover potential gems. Sydney FC versus MacArthur, obviously the second showing between these two sides this season. Sydney FC coming off a pretty horrific result against Melbourne City, as we talked about before. MacArthur coming off a pretty horrific result of their own. So, Cameron, we've got two games where two sides are coming off brilliant wins and horrific losses. In a game of horrific losses, which side prevails?
I don't know, to be honest. I want to say it would be Sydney because I think their home form is just unbeatable. Brisbane came away with a draw last time, but I don't think MacArthur can shut out Sydney the same way. But, we've seen MacArthur can beat anyone in this league. They can also loosen them quite spectacularly, as we saw against Western United. So it's a tight one to call. Personally, I think it will be a draw, but it definitely will not be a 0-0 because MacArthur cannot defend, but they are finding a way to score. And Matt Derbyshire's hit a bit of form. Sydney, it's about whether they can bounce back so quickly after it's quite a short turnaround for them after such a disappointing result. Coruscant won't have much time to work on the team and iron out the creases. And MacArthur, they're a bit of a joker in the pack. They can surprise anyone. So I don't know which way to call it for me.
Yeah, I really do think that we've got an extremely difficult game on our hands to predict. I think Sydney FC definitely have the quality. Luke Braden-Liss. Luke Braden-Liss, I think he obviously suffered that pretty horrific clash where his head just fell back on the canvas. But I do think that MacArthur should be able to grab the victory here, despite sort of all the doomsday statements amongst Sydney FC fans. But I think this really reflects the sort of balanced nature of the competition as a whole. We can't often predict games like these, where MacArthur have such a dynamic attack and a very dynamic midfield with Denis Genre and Benyat Echeverria and Susaeta. Obviously, Matt Derbyshire is obviously scoring in length this season. So I do think that MacArthur should be able to rise from adversity and get that victory. To be fair, they had 20 shots on goal against West United. West United only had 8. So if they can improve that conversion rate, the XG was pretty high as well. So I'm not really sure if you believe in XG, Cameron, but
after the Palace versus Brighton game, not a chance.
Yeah, apparently that was horrific. But there's definitely a lot to think about this game in the coming days when they do kick off, I believe on Sunday afternoon/evening. So plenty of A-League action this week, but we've also got some NPL Victoria action and NPL New South Wales action commencing this weekend. A lot of key clashes in the Victoria competition. I'm not too familiar with the New South Wales competition because I don't live there. However, there are some fantastic players in the NPL Victoria. I just sort of bring your attention to some. George Mel's actually signed with Port Melbourne just now. Kane Shepherd is signed with West United, so that Hume City will not have him on their squad this season. Yazid Said is signed with Avondale. They've also got Vince Leah at the Altona Magic. Just trying to think who else they've got. Ben Carrigan has signed with Bentley Greens. Thiel Iradakunda has signed with the Bentley Greens as well. There's a lot of quality in the NPL, and I do encourage you to go out and watch those streams on Facebook and YouTube. I will be actually calling the Hume City versus Altona Magic on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a wonderful fixture. But I guess, Cameron, coming from a UK perspective, what do you perceive the NPL as in your mind, like compare it to English football? It's probably the closest thing to, I guess, a National League North/South in your opinion. But in terms of the sort of unique ethnic style of many of these clubs, how does it shape up against England?
In England, the non-league clashes, they don't really mean so much in terms of you don't get so many rivalries, you don't get so much history between certain clubs because, the amount of money each club has changes year in, year out, and you don't really get a stable amount of teams in a certain division. So you don't have time for rivalries to sort of foster themselves, because if a team does well, they go up. If a team does not so well, they go down. Because we have so many tiers in our football pyramid, you get clubs shooting up and clubs shooting down. Clubs dissolve. Clubs are created out of nowhere, like Salford City were, or Forest Green Rovers, and they're now league clubs. It's just an example. So it's really difficult to compare it to England, which I'm sure all of you already know. But yeah, it's quite unique in that you do get. I don't think any other country in the world has quite the same system as the NPL has, and because those clubs are locked together in the top divisions of the NPL, and they do get these sort of rivalries to appear, it does make for a better watch as such. I've watched a couple of NPL games, the streams that they have on Facebook and what have you, and they are, if they're on, I'll watch them because they're quite entertaining games. The commentary, that's another big thing. They have good commentators and often assistants as well, covering the games, which is it's nigh on impossible to watch non-league games unless you actually go to the game in the UK. And I don't think there's many people that would choose to watch rather than watch from their home than go to the game, because that's not so much what non-league is about. Non-league is about showing up and supporting your team because you are dedicated to that team. You have to be dedicated if you're a non-league fan, because you don't get much else out of it. You don't get trophies, what have you. And so, yeah, it's definitely... I like watching the NPL, and I think it's a brilliant format for what they can produce. Obviously, it's not going to compare to a second division, and that will take it to the next level. And realistically, that will be the big goal, obviously.
Yeah, I really do think this NPL season is going to be a very integral season in terms of setting their foundations for a national second division, both in promotion, social media promotion I'm talking about, and just the general quality of the competition. A lot of clubs have really elevated their status, their playing squads. Bentley were going to sign Kenny Athieu, but he's obviously gone to Cambodia now. So there are a lot of players within the NPL that would easily be able to be on A-League squads. And if Lyndon Dykes and Matthew Miller and J. Rich Bagaloo and George Timotheu aren't examples of the players that are developed in the NPL, I don't know what is. I mean, they've all gone through A-League academies except for Bagaloo and Lyndon Dykes. But there are plenty of outstanding stories, rivalries, and ultimately football on display in the NPL. And if I want you to watch a game this weekend, Cameron, and those who are watching now, it would be the Heidelberg versus South Melbourne game on Sunday evening, which has actually been moved from Olympic Village to Jack Edwards Reserve. Quite convenient for me. Not too much of a drive for me. But yeah, I guess that really concludes it for the round ball warm-up on a very nice Thursday evening. Cameron, thank you very much for joining once again, and we'll obviously hopefully bring you some more episodes in the future. The pre-recorded episodes are coming back. I can announce now that Richard Bayless from Optus Sport will be joining a pre-recorded podcast, and David Farini, the Australian Serie A World Feed commentator, will also be joining the podcast in the coming weeks. So we've got some big guests coming for you in the coming days and weeks. I will be on the Commons this weekend, as I mentioned before. Please don't slate me to shit. I'm not that bad. Just give me a second. And I'll sort of find my mold as a co-commentator, provide you that that outstanding football analysis that you do need. So, any final words, Cameron?
Well, first and foremost, good luck for the match. You're going to need it.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy to see Perth back. It's been 3 weeks too long or whatever it's been now. So good to see them back. And we've got 2 ties. I think Melbourne Victory could be in for a bit of a thrashing. I think Western United. They tore apart MacArthur despite having that lack of chances. So I don't think it's going to be a brilliant weekend for you. But the more goals, the more excitement.
Well, thankfully, I don't have to watch that because I will be driving up to Broadmeadows for that one. So I'll be driving up at about 6, and I'll arrive there at 7. I'll just have to do my preparation in like the Hume City facilities that they have there, and I won't be able to watch Victory get drubbed or win. I don't know, but hopefully the Glory get a good result. It'd be a big boost for the confidence. They're actually on 5 games, and some teams are on 9. So it's a wonderful thing, the A-League this season, and we're so fortunate to live in a country where we have allowed to have fans at stadiums, although with very harsh restrictions. Amy Park. We'll catch you guys soon, and thank you very much.